Alright, the watch glass is going to be used to cover up the beaker or evaporating dish. We haven't talked about evaporating dish yet, but that's exactly what it would be used for. Um, it's going to sit on top of the beaker, or it'll sit on top of an evaporating dish. It doesn't fasten or anything like that, so it's very easy for it to slide off if you're not careful. If you think about a contact lens where you watch something through a contact lens, that's a good way to remember a watch glass because you tend to watch things through a contact lens, and this looks like a big contact lens. So it's a good way to remember watch glass. Watch glass is again used to cover up a beaker or an evaporating dish. And be extra careful with these. They do tend to slide off fairly easy. Well, I think we all know what a thermometer does. It measures the temperature. So we really don't need to go into that anymore. Pipettes. There are a lot of different pipettes. And we talked about something earlier that measures volume. And I think you remember it was a graduated cylinder. Graduated cylinders do measure volume, that is the use of them. But there are other things called pipettes that measure volume as well, but they tend to be used when you need to measure smaller volumes and you need to be extremely precise. A pipette can be as simple as a medicine dropper, or it can be a graduated pipette, like the one we see here, or a volumetric pipette, like the one that we see here. Liquid is drawn up into either of these pipettes with these sort of plungers or siphons. A bulb is one way to do it. It's the harder way to do it. And then you have also these plunger type of devices that have a little wheel that spins, and as you spin, this plunger moves up and draws liquid into one of the two pipettes. Now, why would we use a volumetric pipette over a graduated pipette? Well, volumetric pipettes are made for specific volumes. So if I wanted to measure, say, if I wanted to measure, say, 4 milliliters, I'm not going to use a volumetric pipette because this volumetric pipette picture here is made just for 5. You fill it up to this line here, that's 5 milliliters of liquid. I could use this pipette, a graduated pipette, for measuring 4 milliliters, or I could use a graduated cylinder, but I'm definitely not going to use the volumetric pipette. The most accurate, precise way to measure volume is going to be with a volumetric pipette, but they don't make large volumetric pipettes. So if you're going to measure 50 milliliters of something, you're going to measure it with a graduated cylinder. But when you get below 10 and you need exact amounts, the pipettes tend to be more precise way of measuring it. So volume is measured with graduated cylinders, it's measured with graduated pipettes, and it's measured with volumetric pipettes. Volumetric pipettes are made for specific volumes, and they give you the most precise, the most accurate measurement for volume. But again, that's only for smaller amounts. A burette is this item here. Sometimes they're glass, sometimes they're plastic. And a burette is used along with an Erlenmeyer flask in what's called titrations. It is actually another way to measure volume, but I want you to know, just associate the word titration with the item burette. You're never going to use a burette to measure just a volume. It's going to be used to titrate an acid or a base and will tell you how much you added of a volume of an acid or a base. But that's all it's going to be used in. You wouldn't use a burette for anything else. It's just used in titrations. And it's pretty standard to see in the background here, Erlenmeyer flask as well, although this is a beaker. Well, it could be an Erlenmeyer flask, it's hard to tell. I'd say it's a beaker. But typically you have a ring stand, a burette clamp like you see here, a burette to hold a burette clamp to hold the burette, and then you fill it up to the 0 mark, and as it drops, as you add the acid or the base, you can tell how much acid or base was added to the acid or base that's sitting in the flask or the beaker. And you can use that value for stoichiometric calculations, molarity, things that we haven't talked about yet, but they're usually standard 50 milliliters in size. So they're kind of in reverse of what you think. The 0 is up here and the 50 is down here. So as you're adding it, you know exactly how much you've added to the acid or the base. So a burette is used in titrations along with an Erlenmeyer flask. And just right now, be able to associate burette and flask, Erlenmeyer flasks, with the experimental use of titrations. All right, that ends part 5. Part 6 is on the way.